One quarterback is out the door. Another one walks right in behind him in Miami. We have a new face of the franchise for at least the next 2 years in Malik Willis, Tua Tagovailoa going elsewhere. And we're going to cover all of that and another move that the Dolphins made today. I'm your host, Tyler DeSena, joined as always by my co-host, Kevin Fielder. Kevin, how are we doing today after day one of free agency?
I'm doing great because honestly, truthfully, I didn't expect them to be very active, if at all active today. I guess, relegated myself to they're not going to do anything today. They're going to be really quiet. They're going to have $7 million in cap, right? They're going to wait until everyone else does their moves and then take advantage of cuts, take advantage of cheap guys on low guarantees, right? I think I had sort of relegated myself to that. But when you look at it, maybe they're going to be a little active in free agency. Very, 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 very minorly active. We're not talking whatever the Raiders are doing today, where I think they've handed out the equivalent of a small country's GDP in money today. But I think they might be a little active the rest of the way.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard multiple things about how they were in on some other free agents. There was the report that came out that they were in on Kendrick Bourne, who hasn't signed yet. So maybe that's still an option, especially with another team that was rumored going after Mike Evans and the 49ers. But yeah, I mean, it seems like you're going to see at least some moves probably from here on out. You're not going to see anything big. It's going to be margin, working on the margins. And that's more of a, day two and kind of week two of free agency deal. But at least they did get something done on day one. But I think it's important to announce, or at least to talk about what they announced that they did before the start of day one, which was moving on from Tua Tagovailoa. You got any thoughts on the official moving on from Tua and now him agreeing to terms on a deal, despite not even being a free agent yet, with the Atlanta Falcons?
It feels weird that it ended this way. It really does. And I know that it kind of had to happen this way, that the Dolphins were not going to go into 2026 with him on the roster. Tua needed a fresh start. There was no other way it was going to happen than a post-June 1st release. But I was talking with someone else about this, and I know you posted a video about it. It's hard for me to figure out how to remember the Tua era because there were the highs of the highs. There was week 2 against Baltimore. There was that first Baltimore game where he came in relief, had a great second half to help lead him to victory. There was a game this year against the Falcons where he ended up signing that I kind of felt like maybe we started to see some of that old Tua back. But then there was always controversy. There was always division. It felt like the fan base, the team, everyone could never figure out what they thought about Tua. And I think that's just the nature of being a quarterback in the NFL and having, a non-Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen type of quarterback where you're always going to have a part of the fan base that thinks he's good. You're always going to have a part of the fan base that thinks they need to improve or upgrade on him. I still don't think the contract was a bad contract. I know it's really easy to look back at the contract and go, well, it didn't work out. Yeah, it didn't work out. The Dolphins are punished because of it. But I think when you look at where they were at that time, I don't regret the contract. I think the contract was fine in a vacuum. I think, right, Chris Greer could have done a better job protecting the Dolphins, protecting the franchise if things were to go poorly, which they did. But I don't know how to remember this era of Dolphins football. I really don't. Do I remember it for the good moments, or do I remember it for all of the uncertainty and all of the division that came with him, that came with Brian Flores, that came with just kind of everything that happened?
Yeah, I totally get where you're coming from because I was born in 2004. This is the most successful Dolphins era I've ever seen in terms of year-over-year success. 22, 23 was the best 2 years of Dolphins football I've ever seen. But at the same time, it's also the most toxic couple years of Dolphins football I've ever seen. I mean, I don't think that we've ever had a player that has caused and sparked as much division, like you said, as Tua has. I mean, there's nobody that I can think of that you go on Twitter, I mean, except for maybe Ryan Tannehill, but even then it wasn't to this extent where it's half the fan base loves the guy, half the fan base hates the guy, and they're fighting about it every single day. And it is hard to, remember the good times that we had with Tua or the bad times we had with Tua and not think about the fact that overall this was just such a difficult time for the fan base where you go into the 2019 season and you are fully on board that this is your guy. I'm sadly in my childhood home right now, so I can't pull it out. But I have a Tank for Tua sweatshirt that I bought going into the 2019 season. I like this was a thing. It was not just like a few people saying on Twitter. It was firmly what the Dolphins needed to do. They needed to lose games to get Tua. You lose games, obviously Tua has the injury, everything happens. But like you are being this guy is propped up before the season even starts as the second coming, the guy that you need to save this franchise to get you your first Super Bowl since Marino, like Super Bowl appearance since Marino, to be like this truly legendary figure. And none of it's ever really at that level. And then when it kind of hits there, you get the injuries, and it's like it really did. It was just set up from the beginning to put all your eggs into this one basket. And a lot of people did, and they loved what they saw. But then people with, higher expectations didn't like what they saw. And it's like, and it was so much division. I'm going to try to look back on it fondly, like that video I made, but it is going to be difficult because there's so much that happened throughout this time period, especially the last couple of years.
I think eventually I'll look back at it fondly. I think eventually, as the heart grows fonder, I think to some degree, and you separate yourself from the era as a whole, you begin to think about it a little differently, right? Like, I kind of remember Ryan Tannehill very similarly, where I'm like, yeah, you know what? He probably was never going to be the option, but we had moments. And I
Yeah.
enjoyed the moments we had with Ryan Tannehill. I think I'll be very similar, but right now it's just so hard because I think I'm still in this mindset, like you kind of mentioned, of like, it's all just there. And there's no way to separate the two things because, we're a couple hours removed from him officially being released. He's already signed to a new team. The NFL moves extremely fast. It feels weird. It's going to feel weird seeing him in a new uniform. And he may never start a game for the Falcons. This may be a moot point in and of itself, but with Michael Penix's health, pretty good chance he may start a game at some point, right? Like,
Yeah, and we don't even know if Penix will start the season.
we really don't. But it's like, it's going to be weird, I think. That first time I see him in an actual Falcons jersey in preseason, in the regular season, whatever, it's going to feel a little weird. And it felt kind of weird when Tannehill was wearing a Titans jersey, right? Like, it just didn't feel right. And I think it's going to feel really weird that first time. And then eventually I'll just be like, hey, man, it didn't work out. But that's like life. Like, that's the life of a football fan. Shit probably doesn't work out 95% of the time, right? And we keep coming back to watch the Dolphins every Sunday. So clearly, I'll think of it fondly. Hopefully the guy we signed, which we'll talk about, I hope he kind of makes my heart feel a little bit fonder about Tua with, the way he plays. Because if he's good, I'll only remember the good moments of Tua because I won't have to remember the bad moments.
Yeah, I mean, it's all going to come down to what they do in the future. I think the Tannehill thing, comparatively to Tua, I think we had a year to think about it, just because the year after Tannehill was the tank season. So it was like we had a year to simmer with it. This Dolphins team went right away the same day that they got rid of one quarterback. The next quarterback is on the roster.
Maybe 2 hours later, they were just like, hey, man, what if we just had a new quarterback? And we're all like, damn, time to talk about this.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, NFL moves fast. I wish Tua the best of luck. I still do think there's an NFL quarterback in there, and I really hope that he delivers some special moments for the Falcons. Like I know a lot of people are going to be very upset if he has any kind of success and it's not in a Dolphins uniform, but I'm not one of those people. I just want to see the guy succeed, and I want to see, I want to see all these players that have left Miami succeed. You see Jalen Phillips getting just an utterly massive contract. But I'm not even going to – I don't want to talk about that right now. I think there is one thing that we do need to touch on before we get into Malik Willis, because it was the other move the Dolphins made today, and we didn't even talk about it in the pre-show. The Minkah Fitzpatrick trade. Like, that happened this morning.
I completely forgot that happened, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Because it kind of happened, and we were all like, "Oh, okay, cool." And then
You're
they
like,
released
huh?
like Tua. Then they did a
Yeah.
lot of other things. We were like, "Oh yeah, that happened too."
I wanted to tweet when that came out. This seems like a precursor to a Malik Willis signing because it just seemed like doing it for a seventh seemed like we are doing whatever we can to get the cap off the books. And why would you need the cap off the books that fast? There was no other big free agent that we felt the Dolphins were really in on. So it felt like it was either a surprise move or Malik Willis, and it ends up being the latter. Minka is still a good football player. Still going to be a pretty good football player in New York, I would imagine, especially with all the other additions they made on defense today. Hopefully Aaron Glenn, moves him around at different spots. Not against Miami, but everywhere else. It's weird. I mean, I saw a tweet today from Brandon Perna, that's good sports, saying how many teams have traded a player twice. Like, Minka ends up back in Miami on a deal that I honestly thought was a fantastic trade. I still do in a vacuum. Think that was a really good deal for the Dolphins to get anything back for Jalen Ramsey, who didn't want to be on the roster, and Jonnu Smith, who's now a free agent. But yeah, I mean, just a weird weird year of Minka Fitzpatrick in Miami.
Very weird year. And again, like you said, he wasn't bad last year. He was actually
Good.
good.
He was
He
good.
was arguably the best player on the Dolphins, at least the best defensive player. And
Yeah.
there were moments of him like looking like old Minka. And so I was kind of the belief that, like, hey, if they want to bring him back, I have no issues with it. If they want to get rid of the contract and, kind of rid themselves of it, wash their hands clean, I think that's the other way to do it. It did come out, which anyone wondering why they only got a seventh for it, they only got a seventh because the Jets ate the entirety of the contract.
Yeah.
And
They're
Miami
coming
took no money back. So they actually cleared more salary cap space, which truthfully, I think that's the way to do it. I think like the difference between a 5th-round pick and a 7th-round pick in a vacuum is so minimal. And
especially if that's the difference that helps you, sign a rookie class or sign a quarterback.
Yeah, right. Like if the difference is that you have to cut another player to get back into salary cap compliance to sign Malik Willis, just take the 7th and go sign Willis. Like I have no issues with Minka Fitzpatrick for a 7th, and like I don't think this is a deal that's going to end up hurting the Dolphins because the Jets are never going to like be a contender in the sense of like we're going to be talking about Minka being the reason the Dolphins don't make the playoffs or don't win the division.
Yeah, like at least not in the same window. Like it's not going to be like that's the thing is what? How old is Minka? I mean,
he's like 30 something. Jeez,
he's 29. He'll be 30 in season. The odds that was a player that will be still at this level when you are competing for, hopefully championships was extremely low. Like it's that simple. And you had an opportunity to lose him to add another player that will hopefully help you compete, or at least the ceiling.
This will definitely get clipped. I'm now thinking about this. This will definitely get clipped when Minka Fitzpatrick has like an interception in week 16.
We will pick off Malik Willis and we will be
the Dolphins will somehow be like 1 win away from a playoff spot in the most improbable season ever. And Minka Fitzpatrick's going to like pick it off like right before the end of the game. And we're all going to be like, damn, that did happen.
Yeah. And we'll enjoy seeing this one on Twitter. But yeah, that's the Minka tenure. Obviously a player I would have loved to get back just due to leadership and having, players that good on your roster at all. But such is the cost of trying to, rebuild your roster really entirely. I think it's like, the first time we're really seeing a rebuild that looks like it's going to be done the right way. And these are the moves that sadly have to get made. So I think we move on here to the most exciting move of the day. Greg Dulcich is back. Now, okay, we'll go. I do want to talk about Greg Dulcich because that is extremely exciting, honestly. But I will go into the big signing of the day for the Miami Dolphins. Malik Willis, formerly of the Green Bay Packers, signs a 3-year, $67.5 million deal with $45 million guaranteed. I'll let you go first because I think people know my thoughts on this if they're listening to this, but this is pretty exciting.
I had always said that my ceiling on this for me to be excited was it had to be similar to the Justin Fields contract with the Jets. Justin Fields got about 20 million. Malik
Yep.
Willis, I think, is
40.
Malik Willis's average is about 22 and a half. So look, I'm not going to get mad over an extra $2.5 million with the cap going up. If you're expecting me to be like one of those angry old men who are like, well, it's not the same, so I'm upset. I'm not, right? Like, I think you look at the contract. There are very few ways that I think this contract will end up hurting the Miami Dolphins in the long run. Because the way I see it is, if Malik Willis is good next year, and you make an improbable run to the postseason, you win 9 games or whatever the case may be. If Malik Willis is good, you have your quarterback. You don't have to worry about what the 2027 draft looks like for quarterbacks, because you ended up finding your quarterback. And that's the ultimate goal of whatever the Dolphins are doing, is you're trying to find your quarterback. And so if it's through Malik Willis being good, it's through Malik Willis being good. On the flip side, if Malik Willis doesn't live up to the contract and he's bad next year, he's an expensive backup or an expensive bridge quarterback to your rookie.
Yep.
And that is equally as exciting to me. There is like very few ways that I think this ends up hurting the Dolphins, unless they fall for a very similar trap and other quarterbacks where you pay them when they're not that good. I don't get the sense this regime is going to end up doing that, so I'm not too concerned about that being a possibility. But like, I don't know if Malik Willis is ever going to be a star, but I'm willing to figure that out. I'm
Yeah.
willing to just try and see, because I think there's enough for me to be excited on film. It's a very small sample size. We're talking, I believe, like 5 games over 2 seasons. One of those games is one where he was just acquired and had to run the most like Mickey Mouse day one install, like mid-screen tight end mid-screen with window dressing the entire game. But there's enough on film for me to be slightly excited. And I kind of want to figure it out. And I think that's where I'm at with this, is like, I just want to figure it out. If he's good, awesome. If he's not good, whatever. It was a risk worth taking. And you can easily get off of that contract after 2027. Over the cap has it at like an $8 million dead cap, which, man, the Dolphins are taking $99 million to get rid of a quarterback this year. $8 million is going to be a drop in the bucket. It's going to be a number that we don't even think about.
Dude, that's the rate of inflation of like the Justin Fields contract.
The cap is going to go up by like 15 million over the next 2 years.
It will literally be free money that you are.
Yeah, we are effectively like taking a dead cap of 8 million, like nothing, to get rid of a guy if he's bad. And so I get why fans are upset, because they see the number. I think the number, he's like the 22nd highest paid quarterback in football. So, no.
First, I think, in terms of AP.
Oh no. How could we ever deal with this, right? Like, if he exceeds that, awesome. If he doesn't, whatever, we live and we move on. Like, I don't see a situation where this contract is one where like 5 years down the line, we're talking about it being the worst thing this regime has ever done. There's been some people saying it'll end this regime. I don't see it. I don't see this ending the regime in any way possible.
I will say something that I don't deal in absolutes often, but I will say this. Unless something drastic happens where something comes out about Malik Willis, or Miami does something with the contract to push a bunch of the dead money into future years, I will not be looking back on this by the time this contract is over and regret the process here. I just won't. I think it's perfectly sound process from a team that told you they were going to be taking swings at the quarterback position for like multiple times at different press conferences. This is every single press conference. John Eric Sullivan's like, we're going to draft a quarterback, or we're going to make sure that we bring competition into the room. This not only does that, it does so in a way that brings at least some sort of a ceiling. I mean, I know that Malik Willis, I've been saying this lately, if you create a pie chart of the results that happened for Malik Willis, I still think it's over 50% that it doesn't work out and he's not your franchise quarterback. It's probably in the 70s or 80%, but it is a much higher percentage that he is a franchise guy than any other option you could have gotten this offseason. and anybody you could have rolled into week 1 with, there is nobody who has a higher percentage chance of being a franchise quarterback than Malik Willis. And not to mention, you're getting him at the 21st highest paid APY in the league and the 18th highest fully guaranteed salary in the league in terms of quarterbacks. If you talk about fully guaranteed money, he's at the 18th most in football. It's simply not a big contract. And I think the only reason that people dislike the contract is largely due to the fact that they just have different values than me and believe that tanking is something that can really work for this regime. That's not something I believe in. I think that I don't want to see an organization purposefully trying to lose games when I'm also trying to evaluate talent on my roster, evaluate a new head coach, and we saw what tanking did for this team in the past. I just don't believe that is a sound way to operate this team. And that's the only potential downside that I see, is that it could potentially, quote unquote, ruin a tank. And I just don't agree that that's a problem.
I think if it ruins the tank, it's probably because Malik Willis has shown enough to be the starter.
Yep.
Like, I think the only way it doesn't is if you like are in the situation where you win like 5 games, which still, if you win 5 games, you have a top like 7 pick. There's enough quarterbacks in next year's class looking ahead that I kind of feel comfortable with. So top 7 is still fine, right? Maybe you have to give up some assets, and you know what? You throw some assets to move up to draft someone, like whatever the case may be. I think I'm fine living in that world, especially because we're taking risks, and the Dolphins haven't taken a lot of risks at this quarterback position in past years. The biggest one is the Josh Rosen one, and he didn't even last a season on the roster. He was effectively benched immediately for Ryan Fitzpatrick, who we got to see effectively ruin a tank to no value whatsoever.
This is less investment than Josh Rosen was, because this is the only thing that is being given here is money in years where you don't need the money in order to compete. You're not playing to win a title. I understand. It is weird to say that Miami is not trying to win a championship while simultaneously not trying to tank. And I think a lot of people either think you're on one side of the spectrum or the other there. Miami is going to be in the middle of those two outcomes, and they're okay living with it. And because of that, they're in a position where this money, especially in 26 and 27, especially even in 27, when you're not paying anyone, is money that you can afford to waste, even if Malik Willis is not what you hope he would be. It's, in my opinion, it's that simple.
They calculated the money. Over the Cap has already calculated the money into 2027. For Malik Willis, his cap hit, I believe, is about $28 million in 2026 or 2027. Excuse me. The Dolphins will still have $97 million in cap space. What are we upset about? That instead of 110 million, they'll have 97 million. So what, man? So what?
Free agent contracts at other positions. It's not always the best thing to have all the money in the world to try to go overpay free agents. This is a team that is talking about building. They're talking about building through the draft. You can't build through the draft if you're spending all of your money on free agents. So they're gonna pick their spots, because they know that most of their salary is going to be coming through drafted players and extension players. They're going to be picking their spots with who gets big money, and Malik Willis just happened to perfectly fall in line with their philosophy.
Yeah, the way I see this is effectively like the Vikings going out and signing Sam Darnold 2 seasons ago. Sam Darnold was a backup in San Francisco, had barely seen the field for the 49ers. He had been a quarterback who had just not developed in 2 different places, in New York and Carolina with the Panthers. They gave him a contract. He ended up starting, partly because J.J. McCarthy tore his meniscus and missed the entire season. But regardless, Sam Darnold was your starter. He led you to a playoff game. Then you make the decision to not re-sign him. But the Vikings gave him $10 million as a risk, as a high backup, right? I know this is double the money, a little over double the money, but it's a very similar thought process of like, if this doesn't work out, this doesn't work out. That's fine. That's absolutely fine if this does not work out. But if it does work out and Malik Willis plays like Baker Mayfield did in Tampa Bay, or Sam Darnold did in Minnesota, where the Seattle Seahawks felt comfortable giving him the money, or any of these other situations, that's good news. That's
Yeah,
effectively good news because Malik Willis is 27 years old. And if he continues to develop, we're not talking about a situation where if they had gone out and signed Geno Smith, for example, who's, I believe, 35, 36 years old, where if he hits the ground running and, he looks really good, he maybe has another year of high level football in his future, right? Like Malik Willis is not in that kind of situation. And so I'm much more comfortable giving him this money and letting him figure it out, especially because, like you mentioned, the Dolphins still have a lot of players on that offense that they have to evaluate. They can't afford to give a year of nothing to Jonas Savanea or Patrick Paul or, Jalen Waddle or
if
Devon
you
A.
somehow go into this year without an Aaron Brewer extension
Right?
in like
Like
a slightly different offense, or
there,
yeah,
there's so much that they have to evaluate that they can't afford to just wipe their hands, go Quinn Ewers and Case Keenum, for example, go lead us to the promised land of a first overall pick. Like there's enough, I think, on offense, and even more when you consider that they're likely drafting an offensive tackle, they're likely drafting a wide receiver, they're going to have new tight ends on the roster. There's enough that they have to evaluate and develop that you want a quarterback who at least has the possibility to be functional inside an offense,
yeah,
because you can't afford to be the league's worst passing offense with no rushing ability and be the 32nd best offense when you have to evaluate an entire offense. And so like I think this is the investment that they needed to make. This
yeah,
felt like a non-negotiable to me, that they needed a quarterback who could be a starter in the NFL or had the potential to be a starter in the NFL. And if it ends up being that Malik Willis is bad in camp and Quinn Ewers wins the job, whatever, right? Like whatever. There's so many situations in this contract where I'm like, whatever. If it happens in a certain way, whatever, it happens that certain way. I'll say I'm very excited to see how different the offense looks with a quarterback who's athletic, who's a threat in the run game, who has a cannon of an arm, even if it's not always accurate, right? Like this is entirely different from Tua in ways that like it's going to look different on Sundays. It's not going to look the same. There's going to be some plays that Tua can run that he can't run, he being Malik Willis, and vice versa. So I'm really excited to see what Bobby Slowick does in the sense of like, do we see more read options? Do we see more, triple op? Like, what do we see that's different? Because, man, I think it's going to be so unique to see how this offense looks on Sundays because, man, Malik Willis is just an entirely different quarterback
it's
than
not a quarterback archetype that Miami has even been remotely close to as a full-time starter ever. The only person you can even remotely compare to it is like somewhat Tyler Huntley with the ability to move, but the explosiveness, the arm talent, the pure speed, those things are not even close with Tyler Huntley as they are to Malik Willis. And you're talking about a version of that where, like with Tyler Huntley, where Mike McDaniel could not call a sound offense with any backup quarterback. So hopefully with a full offseason and a new offensive mind, we could see some real maximization of Malik Willis here. I think it's time. I think we wrap it up on that topic at least. I think it's pretty clear that both of us believe that there is just little to no downside here, as I spit everywhere. But there is one more move that I think is important to talk about, and it's one that has me a little excited here. Sadly, Kendrick Bourne will not be a Dolphin. I see that he signed in Arizona. With
damn.
2 years, 11.47 that can go up to 11 point, or that can go up to 16.47.
Is that per year or is that total? I'm
11 to 16 total. So 5.5 to 8 per year.
sure the Dolphins were very similar in that money.
I just don't think they can match the high end.
Yeah, I don't know if they were comfortable matching 16 million for a wide receiver who's already in his 30s. Whatever. I'm not going to lose
no touchdowns last year. Did you know that?
No.
Kendrick Bourne had 500 yards and no touchdowns.
That whole offense was weird last year. I think I watched effectively like one full 49ers game. So I'll be honest, I can't say like I'm an expert on what Kendrick Bourne looked like last year because I was not watching that offense for 99% of the year.
Yes. But the move that the Dolphins did make is bringing back tight end Greg Dulcich on a 1-year deal worth, I believe, $3.25 million.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, don't think this one requires that much of analysis, but fantastic move here for Miami, bringing back somebody who really showcased some pass catching juice as a real tight end for you late in the season last year, especially when you didn't have Darren Waller on the roster and Dulcich wasn't, he had once he had grasped like the motions and the snap counts and like all the things that he needed down the stretch, he was a genuinely good player for this team and is somebody that can really, get out there, move for you and make plays. And I don't see the downside to this. Do I think he's a number one tight end of the future? No, but you're giving him a 1-year prove it deal. And who knows if he proves it, you could be seeing a longer term contract for him here.
Yeah, he's getting paid Austin Hooper money, which makes him the 40th highest paid tight end in football right now.
And he's going to have, I'm willing to predict that he will have better than the 40th best tight end receiving season.
Yeah, he's solid. He's solid.
Yeah.
You're paying him a cheap deal that is a 1-year contract, right? Like, I think it's effectively extending your evaluation window on him, which I feel is probably the most comfortable way to do this, because I also wasn't ready to. Everyone was like, why not give him a 3-year deal? I'm not ready to give a guy a 3-year deal for like 8 games of production. I know we say this as we also gave Malik Willis a 3-year deal for 5 games of production, but like for a guy like Greg Dulcich, who was signed to the practice squad, who was not elevated until later in the year, right? Like, I think if you can get another year of evaluation to see if he's worth extending long term, that's the right thing to do. And now, this also, I think, doesn't preclude you from signing another tight end or drafting a tight end relatively early if there's one you like. Like, there's so many situations where this Greg Dulcich money is not hindering you. And we'll see like what the actual contract looks like if they add void years at the end, like Chris Greer would have done with literally anyone they signed. But even if it's a $3.25 million cap hit, there's very few ways that I think this contract, isn't just whatever. Like, I think that the only way this contract is really good is if he like is a top 15 tight end in football next year, which feels unlikely if we're being.
But again, isn't totally out of the range of outcomes. Like signing a guy who's 25, going to be 26. Like, I'm not saying that he will be this. I'm just saying it follows the same thought path as the Malik Willis contract, where it's like best case scenario, you have someone who has showcased a lot and can be and has the potential at least to be a top half the league player. And even though the most likely scenario is that he's not that, you've given him a contract where it does not burden you at all to get this player on your roster. Also, Google AI will tell you he's 26 and every other source tells you he's 25. So thank you, AI. You're great once again.
Yeah, it's a contract. Like, I think it's a contract I'd feel comfortable doing. I kind of felt like $5 million was my cap for him as I went through like how much I'd pay every free agent that the Dolphins have. He got under $5 million. I can't be upset about it. Like, I think that there's so many ways that this only ends up benefiting the Dolphins. I think Dulcich had moments last year that made him look like a tight end one, as a check down option, as a blocker, as the things that you want a tight end to be. I think it's more likely he's a long-term tight end two for a team, but I think I'd kind of feel comfortable with giving him a year of being tight end one, just to see if, it's possible that he is that. And then if he's not, we get to know what he is and we get to evaluate and sign based off that, which truthfully is probably better than giving him 3 years now and then having to guarantee a second year, which if you guarantee a second year and he's bad, that's $3 million that you're wasting effectively. And so I think I'm fine with, if it doesn't end up being anything, whatever, we get to wipe our hands clean and, go into 2027 knowing that we need 2 tight ends or 3 tight ends, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I mean, this is a player that produced very early in his career, then ended up getting cut. And
also, Dulcich will turn 26 in
17 days.
17 days. So
yeah,
AI was just early.
They just fantastic. But yeah, there's just, he has enough pass game juice as like a pure mover and like a guy who can, has sure hands and is a pure mover, that like he will be at least solid check down option and somebody that if he finds space in the middle of the field, you feel like can create at least a little bit, which is good enough for this offense. And should be a sufficient enough blocker as a tight end too, kind of F guy that maybe you can get heavy, go 12 personnel, 13, and really use some of your like power element and combine that with the speed of a Malik Willis type.
If
But
he gets me 500 receiving yards or 450 receiving yards and 2-3 touchdowns, I think it's
I'll
a
do a
good deal.
backflip.
Yeah, I'll do a backflip. If he matches what he did last season, it's worth the $3.25 million. This is hardly anything. I'm just excited to see him continue to develop because I think there's at least something that I'm willing to take a chance on. Also, I'm now looking at his stats, and he had -7 rushing yards last year, and I do not remember him getting a rush.
Maybe a fumble recovery. I'm
That's what I
seeing this
imagine.
too. He had 335 receiving yards last season. In 10 games, 3 starts. If you combine that over a full season, I mean, that's
I'll
500
take 33 yards per game. I have no issues
if
with
you're
that.
getting if you're getting a few catches from him, it's more than worth it. And honestly, in this year where the money is just funny and doesn't matter, honestly, there's no way that this turns out to be a bad deal. But with that, I think we can wrap it up. Sadly, Kendrick Bourne, by the way, got 10 to 12 million. Schefter was wrong on his initial report and then redid it. So it's 10 with a maximum of 12. Would a deal that I would have loved to see Miami in on?
I think even that. I'm a little more upset. Now, not upset enough to lose sleep over this. Let's be clear.
Yes.
But they still need another receiver or two. And so I think I would have been comfortable giving that and seeing what it is. I will say the receiver market's really bad this year. So
we'll see where they go. Because, I mean, you think that you assume that they'll at least bring in one or two free agent wide receivers just purely based on
numbers. Look at their roster. They need more than Theo Weiss as a fucking X receiver. So
yeah, no, it's an interesting spot. But with that, that's just about it for the Miami Dolphins, and that means it's just about it for us. Hopefully, we are back soon with some more moves. Solid start to day one. Miami Dolphins bring in Malik Willis. Tua walks out the door. Greg Dulcich is back, and Minkah Fitzpatrick is a Jet. So with all of that, we leave you here, and I leave you with a Go Fins.
Fins up.